I'm joined by Gordon Fairclough, World Coverage Chief for the Wall Street Journal. Welcome, Gordon. I mean, this is bad news, but not unexpected.
Sadly, not unexpected. We've been through a few of these attempts to get Evan released on bail or at least put under house arrest, all of which have been denied.
Let's recap. Let's remind our viewers exactly what his predicament is, how long it's gone on for. When was he arrested?
So he was arrested 6 months ago, detained a bit over 6 months ago. Since that time, he's been held in the Lefortovo prison in Moscow, which is a prison used to hold political prisoners going back to the Soviet era. Alexander Solzhenitsyn was held there. So basically being held prisoner there just for doing his job.
Yeah, let's stress that. What was his job? All he was doing was being a journalist. He's your colleague, he's my colleague. He works for this building, and so we stand with Evan. Let's make that absolutely clear. His predicament is entirely unjustified. He was just doing his job, wasn't he?
He was, and was very dedicated to doing his job and was accredited by the Russian government to be a foreign correspondent there in Russia and was reporting on what is going on in Russia during the course of this war, and was grabbed by Russian state security agents and tossed into prison.
And is he being allowed access to lawyers? Is he getting to talk to anyone, maybe even yourself, any of his colleagues? What is life like for him in terms of communications with people outside his cell?
So most of his communications with people outside his cell are with the lawyers. He does get regular access to his lawyers. He's had consular access with U.S. diplomats a couple of times. His parents traveled to Russia and were in the courtroom for a hearing and were able to exchange a few words with him. I think both a very difficult moment, but also somewhat encouraging that they were able to actually see him. But much of what we hear from Evan comes out in the form of letters, and he gets hundreds of letters for which everyone writing letters to Evan, thank you very much. It's really important to him, and he does write back, and so we have some gauge from that he seems to be in good spirits and keeping his strength up.
Why do you think they picked on him? I mean, he's not the only Western reporter operating out there. Why Evan?
Well, it feels to us very much like he's being held hostage to geopolitics, and we can kind of only assume that he was taken because he's an American and that the Russians want something in exchange from the American government.
I mean, has there been any movements in that direction? Have there been any appeals from Russia to the American government in terms of what they might want for the release of Evan Gershkovich?
Right. We don't have great transparency into that process, or I don't, being on the news side of the organization. President Biden and the U.S. government has made it clear publicly this is an extremely high priority for them. And talks, there have been prisoner exchanges between the U.S. and Russia before, and so there's a channel for these communications. We hope that talks are going on. Russian officials have dropped some hints that they're open to an exchange, so we'd like to see something like that happen as soon as possible.
Is it your understanding that in these dire circumstances he's managing to keep his spirits up?
It does seem that way. I mean, he's an incredibly resilient young guy who's very passionate about his work and, is unsurprisingly, to me anyway, spending his time in prison productively, reading Russian literature, improving his Russian, and just doing a lot of push-ups, I suspect.
I guess so, yeah. I was going to ask you that. I mean, what kind of a person is Evan? I mean, I've read that he's very popular with his colleagues, a great journalist, very dedicated. He supports some British football team, doesn't he?
He's a big Arsenal fan.
Well, you see, there was me, full of praise for him, and then you go and drop that bomb. But seriously, so a big Arsenal fan. Why is that?
He gives Chelsea fans a really hard time.
Yeah, good.
He's been an Arsenal fan ever since he was a kid. He's a big football player in the United States, was captain of his high school team, which won the state championship. And I think those kinds of things are important for people to remember. Often when I'm on talking about Evan and we're in these forums and interviews, you know, Evan is a symbol, right? A symbol for press freedom, a symbol of someone who's become a hostage. But, you know, he's a regular guy. He's a 31-year-old guy who's now spent 6 months away from his family and his friends, unable to play football, unable to watch TV, you know, and just live a normal life.
Unable to watch Arsenal as well. But seriously, Gordon, thank you so much for coming in. He's our colleague. We stand with Evan.